Thank you very much for welcoming me here. We have about 45 minutes of time. Let me talk about maybe half of that, and then let's go into the debate, and we can start a monologue, to which I'm actually quite looking forward to. Okay, so one of the main things that we hear in the newspapers and from politicians and actually from economists all the time, that the economy is depressed. This, I think, is a wrong diagnosis. The economy is not depressed, the economy is manic depressed. And there's a huge difference. It is not really the lack of growth that is torturing us right now. It is too much growth that we got used to. Let me try and explain why. This growth that we had before was not a natural sort of growth, it was a manic sort of growth. So let me see how, okay, very nice. If you actually want to treat a bipolar patient, the economy has a tendency to overdo its good moods into manias and its bad moods into suicidal depressions. So here we have Greeks, okay? If they worked twice as much as they work today, they wouldn't have a problem. This is sort of what you get in between the lines in the newspaper. Well, let's take a look in Ireland. If Irish, especially bankers, worked half the time, they would not have a problem. This is the root of the crisis. Not this. This is just a casualty of war. I mean, a lot of people say that Greece is sort of lagging behind. I think Greece is really ahead of us. They're just bankrupted 20 years before the rest would. So, we should take, Greece have always been a little bit advanced with their philosophers and everything. This is sort of an early warning. But the Irish crisis, that's really the root of the problem. Every small child knows what to do with Greece. There's a wonderful quote by Dutch politicians. It's not that we wouldn't know what is the right thing to do, we just don't know how to be re-elected after that. And this is the problem we get. So it's sort of a political, maybe, but technically speaking, we all know what to do. Now, what to do in Ireland for this not to repeat, that's the question. I've been just a couple of days ago in St. Gallen Symposium, and there was these businessmen talking about how growth will return and how everything will be gloomy again. And I thought, well, this panel could be called "Give Us Back Our Good Old Unsustainability," because we just like it so much. Why was our growth unsustainable? Well, I would say for 4 reasons, just very quickly. When you have a wave, let's say this is the level of waters, and if a wave forms, it always goes at the expense of the surrounding level. So the wave, so to speak, forms, gathering the energy from its surrounding. Now, I will try to argue that this, in fact, is what happened in the past. We took energy of the past, fossil fuels, by the way, fossil fuels is solar energy, a little bit ancient, but once it was solar energy and oil and everything, and we've been growing. The last 2 or 3 generations really know how to make use of gas, oil especially. How much would we grow if we didn't have these unrenewable sources is clear. Much, much less. We wouldn't have airplanes, we wouldn't have so much international trade, etc., etc. Okay, another source that we have is future. Now this is an easy one. This is the debt money. Okay, it looks like I'm maybe borrowing money from the bank, but what I'm in fact doing is I'm just taking my future energy and I'm laser pointing it to today. But then when I'm 60, for example, I have to pay it back. The trick here is, the trick that we've been all lured to, is if I take 10,000 Swiss francs of a loan, then only a fool would say that I'm 10,000 Swiss francs richer. Everybody understands the difference between borrowed money and owned money. Yet, if the government does exactly the same thing, we all think we're richer. So if a government takes 3% of GDP in debt, and in that year, let's say it grows by 3%, we all think that we are actually growing. This is in fact what's happening on every day. We have these great news, oh, okay, the economy is growing by 3%. Well, okay, if you want to call this growth, then let's just say not gross domestic product, but gross debt product. And then that should be fine. Now, another source is, so this is past, future. This would be sort of horizontal. Here I mean globalization. We've grown a lot because of globalization, and also many of our countries because of international trade. The trick here with international trade, of course, it's beneficial for the poor countries, but it's much more beneficial for us. This is sort of how that works. And the third is sort of colonization that we had in the past. Most of our cities, or some of our cities, are actually built from gold and iron and work that wasn't ours. Okay, the final source here is some sort of a vertical. Let's call it innovation. Okay, also in innovation we had 20 years of amazing leap forward, internet, mobile telephony, things that we wouldn't imagine. It's actually more crazy than that. My father, he could actually play with kids in Mesopotamia. If he was time traveled back 4,000 years, he could play with kids from Mesopotamia. In other words, his toys were pretty much the same like those kids back there. Wooden or cloth representation of the things around him. My kid could not play with those anymore. I mean, he needs an iPod, he needs digital games. I mean, the toys that our children play with are something that I myself would not have understood 5 years ago. Where's the keyboard? Where's the mouse? Where's the cables? You know, all these things. Okay, what's my point? My point is that all of these are running out. We are running out of fossils. I mean, we still will be able to harvest a little more, but everybody knows sooner or later we will run out. This is also very clear. This, I think, cannot be overstressed. Our growth is based on debt, and that debt is, I'm sorry to say, running out. So this is in a way the end of the Keynesian debate that we had for 90 years, whether to stimulate the economy with deficits or not. This debate is over because deficits have run out. It's like a debate whether drug can increase your mood or not, and we debate that for 60 years. Now that drug is over, it's out, we have no more drug, we have to live without it. The drug has run out in Greece, the drug has run out in Ireland, in Hungary, and in other countries as well. And it will run out even in places like Germany and Switzerland. It is not an endless resource, like we thought maybe 2 generations or generation ago. Globalization, also something that will continue, but never at the pace that we've seen in the past. Of course, the huge question mark here is innovation. There we don't know. And this is really our only hope if we want to continue on the track. So, it's not the lack of growth that has brought us to where we are. We are not bankrupting because we are not growing enough, which is sort of the image that you often tend to get. We are bankrupting because we are indebted. We are not bankrupting because of Chinese competition. We are not bankrupting because of inefficient efficiencies. We are only bankrupting because we wanted to grow a little higher than we could. That's why we have all these debts. And, the very philosophy of debt, in Greek, this is actually funny. In Greek, in New Testament Greek, the word for debt and sin are synonyms. Also, actually, in German, Schuld. So, and this is also true in Latin and also in Aramaic. So, the Lord's Prayer should be literally translated, forgive us our debts as we forgive those who are indebted to us. This is the case. This is Matthew 16. In Latin, Dimini nos debita nostra. Diminish our debit cards. Or debits, so to speak. And actually it's funny if you start translating these things that you read in the newspaper, if you actually take them literally, or if you translate them in their original meaning. You know, the first name that somebody put on the crisis was a credit crunch. Talking about debits, credits. So credit in Latin means faith. We have credo, the confession of faith. So it was a crunch, it was a faith crunch. Our faith crunched. In other words, we believed something that didn't materialize. And here I think there's another interesting point to make. I don't think this is really a crisis of capitalism. This is a crisis of growth capitalism. And somewhere along the way, I don't know exactly where, we put an equation mark between growth and capitalism. And I have this huge argument with my esteemed colleagues who believe that we have to actually stimulate. I said, we've already done it. I mean, we've been there, we had low unemployment, we had high growth, we had high deficits, we had everything and a bag of chips. And, I mean, it didn't get us anywhere. And the fundamental question here is growth a result of market democracy that sometimes appears and sometimes doesn't, but it's not a fundamental thing, which is what I believe. I believe capitalism and democracy can stand as they are without the necessity to be bribed every year by 3-4% purchasing power parity capital and enrichment of everybody. Not everybody, but everybody's head. This is per capita. This doesn't include the rest of your bodies. Your GDP on my head. So is growth a result of market democracy? Or is really the case, what we hear in the newspapers repeated every single day, is it perhaps true what they say, that growth is not a result of market capitalism, but in fact it's a conditio sine qua non of market capitalism. In other words, market capitalism will collapse without growth. And they always tell me, you're a critique of capitalism. I say, I have nothing against capitalism. I am a critique of growth capitalism. And in fact, I believe in capitalism more than you do, guys, because I think it can't stand without growth. You don't believe it. You think it has to have growth. If it doesn't have growth, it collapses. Show me your faith. My faith is greater. Democracy and free markets are not here primarily to give us growth. Actually, if you go into the linguistics of the word, we must grow. You hear this every time. We must grow. Okay, fine. So let's deconstruct this a little bit. The word must. Interesting. Because today we live in a time where we believe in freedom very, very much. The difference between a free person and a slave is that one wishes to and the other one must. They might do the same thing, but one wishes and the other one must. And now, even though we fought so much so that we could and don't have to, we swap these two words in common language quite frequently. Okay. Let's imagine you are sitting with your friends in a pub and you want to go home. What do you say? I have to go home. I'm sorry, I must go home. No, you don't have to. You want to go home. Say it. I mean, be a free person. Why do you put yourself in the position of a slave? And this is exactly what we do. You know, your wish, this is how a servant talks to his master, or subordinate to his boss or her. Your wish, or your want, is my command. This is a system that transforms wishes into commands. So maybe we don't have to grow, maybe we want to grow. And now let's target at the second word, the word growth. Okay, what do we mean by growth? We don't mean the growth of arts, we don't mean the growth of the number of smiles, we don't mean the growth of nature or knowledge. We mean wealth. So, let me now translate this very convincing slogan, we must grow. It really actually is just, we want to be richer in this guise. And you can see how the conversation completely changes if you just substitute these two things that are actually, at the end of the day, this is what we mean. Now, we took the train here, and it was a very interesting experience because here in Switzerland, I must say, the train came late. I have a picture of it, and I recorded the sound of it coming late, so I can come back to Czech Republic and say, you know, it's everywhere the same. So that was my first experience, and the second experience was that I had a very nice phone call with a lady from somewhere in another city than in Switzerland. And we got cut off 4 times by somebody. No, simply the signal was weak. So I was thinking, well, you know, this is a very fast connection that's not stable. Isn't this a perfect image of our economies? Very fast, but not stable. Greece was very fast until it wasn't. Ireland, even more so. Ireland, from being one of the poorest countries, you know, the Giffen good people 2 generations ago eating potatoes with potatoes on a good day and potatoes without potatoes on a bad day. In 2 generations, oh, you know the joke about 2 types of economists? This is sort of a joke that usually takes 3 to 4 seconds for the audience to understand, so take your time. It took me also. There are 3 types of economists, okay? One that can count and the other one that cannot. 3 seconds only. So I think I'm the second type. So haven't we done this? Haven't we done this exactly with our economies? This is not true just of Europe, but also of America. We sold stability, making our economies extremely unstable, very volatile to bankruptcies. Oh yeah, who's going to be next? You hear it in the newspapers. Oh, is it going to be Spain? Is it going to be Portugal? Is it going to be Belgium? Is it going to be Japan? It could be anyone. No country is safe. We've sold stability and we bought growth. What needs to be done now is exactly the reverse order. We need to start selling growth and buying stability. So even if growth comes back, the role of an economist is not, by the way, to increase GDP. The role of an economist is to decrease the amplitude of a business cycle. In other words, if we want to speed up the economies, let's say this is, I don't know, -10, and we want to speed it up to -3, so it's bearable. If we want to do this, which we do want to do, then naturally we also have to, instead of 8, have 2. So if we invent something extremely ingenious, iPod 4 that you don't even have to touch, then we should actually slow down growth to pay back the debts that we've accumulated. The crisis will not be over when we start growing. The crisis will be over when we pay back the level of debt that we've created in the meantime. If we don't do that, and this is my last thought, if we don't slow down our growth and pay back whatever it is that we have to pay, next crises that may come in 10 years, in 15 years, in 20 years, I don't know, will definitely kill us. This one maybe not. This one we can still survive. But the next one, if we don't clear our sins, it will. And my last hint is during Sunday, take Financial Times or Handelsblatt or actually anything. And instead of the word debt, just read the word sin and you get the gospel. The Greeks were falling under the weight of their sin. They could no longer carry it. They needed someone with bigger faith, credit, to redeem them. In other words, this is what Jesus did. He took our debts, put them upon himself, and paid them. This is why Jesus uses all this very economic terminology at the end of the day. Okay, thank you very much.